Nathan Anderson never really noticed his hands until the day they betrayed him. 36 years at the Whirlpool plant had given them a particular memory, calloused in specific places, stronger in the right than the left, with a slight tremor in the pinky finger where a conveyor belt had once caught and crushed it. They knew exactly how to install a refrigerator compressor in 84 seconds. They could feel when a seal was imperfect without his eyes confirming it. They were hands that understood their purpose. But on the morning of February 10, 2010, as he stood in the break room of Plant 21 staring at the notice pinned to the bulletin board, those reliable hands shook so badly he had to shove them into the pockets of his work pants. Official announcement. Whirlpool Corporation to relocate. Evansville production to Mexico. Effective immediately, all refrigerator production at the Evansville facility will begin transitioning to plants in Mexico. Complete closure anticipated by mid-2010. Approximately 1,100 positions will be eliminated. Nathan blinked hard. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the same irritating hum he'd filtered out for decades suddenly intrusive. Coffee scalded his tongue as he took a distracted sip, but he barely registered the pain. Around him, other early shift workers clustered in twos and threes, their voices a low, stunned murmur. "They can't do this," someone said behind him. "They just can't." But they could, they were. Nathan had first walked through the doors of the sprawling facility on U.S. Highway 41 in 1974, a 20-year-old with a high school diploma and his father's advice ringing in his ears. "Get on at Whirlpool, son, it's solid work, it'll see you through." For 36 years it had, through marriage to Emma, through raising their daughter Evelyn, through the mortgage on their ranch house on Sweetser Avenue. Through 2 car payments and a kidney stone and Emma's mother's funeral and Evelyn's college tuition at the University of Southern Indiana. "Anderson, you seeing this shit?" Ed Conley's voice, floor manager, 28 years in, cut through Nathan's fugue. "They're really doing it, after all their promises." Nathan nodded mutely. The rumors had been circulating for months, years even. The company had been moving operations piece by piece, first to Tulsa, then to Arkansas, then to Mexico. Each time, executives had assured the Evansville workers they were still the heart of the operation, still valued, still secure. Nathan had believed them because he needed to. Because not believing meant confronting a truth too jagged to touch. "Meeting in the main assembly area at 7:30, Ed said, his face pale beneath his perpetual tan. "Suppose to give us details then." Nathan's watch read 6:42, 48 minutes until official confirmation of what he already knew. His life was ending, at least the life he understood. "I need some air," he muttered, turning away from the bulletin board. "They're not letting anyone leave once they clock in," Ed warned. "Company policy today." Of course they were afraid. Afraid of what 1,100 desperate people might do. Outside, the February morning bit at Nathan's skin. The plant's massive parking lot stretched before him, row after row of American cars and trucks, Fords, Chevys, Dodges, vehicles bought with Whirlpool paychecks by people who believed in American manufacturing. Who believed the promise that if you worked hard and stayed loyal, your company would return that loyalty. The plant itself was a sprawling beige monolith, its water tower rising like a sentinel above the low-slung buildings. Whirlpool, it proclaimed in fading blue letters. Nathan had always felt a swell of pride seeing it from the highway, knowing he was part of something substantial. Now the sight made his stomach curdle. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Emma. He let it go to voicemail. What could he say? That at 56 he was about to become unemployed, that their health insurance would end, that the pension he'd been counting on would be a fraction of what he'd planned for. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and the metallic tang that always lingered around the plant. Familiar smells. The soundtrack of his adult life had been the rhythmic hum and clank of assembly lines, the hiss of pneumatic tools, the beep of forklifts in reverse. Now he strained to hear it all, knowing each sound had an expiration date. Back inside, Nathan moved through security on autopilot, swiping his badge with the practiced motion of someone who has performed the same action thousands of times. In the locker room, he stored his lunch, the same peanut butter sandwich and apple Emma had made him for decades, and headed to his station in final assembly. The usual pre-shift banter was absent. Men and women who normally joked and complained stood in silent clusters, their faces etched with the same stunned disbelief Nathan felt. Some were crying openly. Others looked angry, their movements jerky with suppressed rage. A few seemed resigned, as if they'd been expecting this all along. "My cousin works at Toyota," Darlene from testing was saying. "Says they might be hiring soon, but it's an hour drive to Princeton each way." Alcoa's not taking applications, someone else responded. Already asked. Bristol Myers is running skeleton crews. Mead Johnson outsourced their packaging department last year. Nathan listened, mentally ticking off the diminishing industrial landscape of Evansville. Once a manufacturing powerhouse on the Ohio River, the city had been losing factories steadily since the 1980s. Bussarasiri, Serval, Chrysler. One by one, the pillars of Evansville's working class had crumbled, leaving Whirlpool as one of the last major employers that offered solid blue-collar wages. At 7:30 sharp, a convoy of suits appeared on the assembly floor, local management flanking two executives from the Michigan headquarters, their clean hands and pressed shirts marking them as different as other. "I know this is difficult news," began a thin man with silver-rimmed glasses, his voice amplified by a portable microphone. "Whirlpool Corporation has made the strategic decision to consolidate North American refrigeration production at our facilities in Mexico, where we can remain competitive in a global marketplace." Nathan tuned out the corporate doublespeak, the hollow assurances about severance packages and job placement assistance. Instead, his mind wandered to his first day at the plant, July 1974. Nixon had just resigned. His father had driven him there, clapped him on the shoulder with calloused hands just like the ones Nathan would develop. "Don't let them see you're nervous," his father had advised. "Work hard, keep your head down, do that and you've got a job for life." A job for life, that had been the unspoken contract. The company provided security, and in return you gave them your loyalty, your time, your body. Nathan had fulfilled his end. He'd worked overtime whenever asked. He'd come in on holidays. He'd skipped Evelyn's soccer games when production quotas demanded it. He'd damaged his hearing from decades on the line, developed arthritis in his shoulders and back, sacrificed his knees to the concrete floors. All because he believed the promise, "Do this work and you will be taken care of." Severance package includes 2 weeks' pay for each year of service, capped at 52 weeks, the executive was saying. Health benefits will continue through the end of the month following your last day of employment. Our HR team will conduct individual meetings to discuss retirement options for eligible employees. Nathan did the mental math. 36 years meant 72 weeks of pay, but the cap would cut that to 52. A year of salary. It sounded generous until you considered the reality. At 56, with skills specific to an industry leaving America, where would he go? What would he do when those 52 weeks ran out? "I understand there are questions," the executive continued as hands shot up around the room. "We'll try to address as many as we can, but please understand some details are still being finalized." "When's the last day?" someone called out without waiting to be acknowledged. "Production will wind down in phases. Some lines will continue operating through June, with final closure expected by mid-July." "What about the promise you made in 2008? This from Terrence Wilkins, 30 years on the motor assembly line, his voice cracking with emotion. "You said if we took that pay cut, our jobs would be secure." The executive cleared his throat, suddenly finding his notes very interesting. "Market conditions have changed significantly since then. The global economic crisis has forced us to reevaluate." "Bullshit," the shout came from somewhere in the back. "You planned this all along." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Nathan felt the tension in the room thicken, the collective anger of hundreds of workers pressing against his skin like a physical force. "Please," the executive said, raising his hands placatingly. "I understand you're upset. This decision wasn't made lightly." "How much are they paying workers in Mexico?" This from Marcia Daniels, a quality inspector with 25 years at the plant, a beat of uncomfortable silence. "Labor costs are one factor among many in this decision," the executive answered carefully. "What's the hourly wage?" Marcia persisted. $3.04. The executive's face tightened. "As I said, this is about overall competitive positioning, not just labor." "Just tell us the truth for once," Nathan surprised himself by speaking. "We deserve that much." All eyes turned to him. Nathan Anderson, known for his quiet reliability, his even temperament, his willingness to work through lunch when deadlines loomed, was challenging management. The executive met his gaze for a moment, then looked away. "Today's shift will continue as normal. Tomorrow, you'll receive your individual transition schedules. Thank you for your cooperation during this difficult time." And just like that, it was over. The suits retreated, leaving a vacuum that quickly filled with the buzzing voices of shocked workers. Did you know? A hand grabbed Nathan's elbow. Evelyn's husband, Michael, who worked in the warehouse. Young, just 28, with a 2-year-old daughter and a baby on the way. Nathan, did you hear anything before today? No, Nathan said, the word like ash in his mouth. Nothing solid. Michael's face crumpled. We just bought the house. The mortgage, Christ, what are we going to tell Evelyn? Nathan had no answer. His daughter, 7 months pregnant with their second grandchild, would be devastated, not just for her husband's job but for her father's as well. The thought of telling her made his chest tight. We'll figure something out, he said, the platitude hollow even to his own ears. The rest of the shift passed in a surreal fog. Nathan's body went through the familiar motions, installing compressors, checking seals, initialing quality control forms, while his mind reeled. Conversations around him faded in and out like a badly tuned radio. Moving to Louisville, my sister says there's work. Can't sell the house, not in this market. Maybe early retirement, but the penalty. Kids' braces, and Joey needs his medication. Fragments of shattered lives. By lunchtime, several workers had simply walked off the line, unable to continue. Management, uncharacteristically, let them go without comment. What was the point of disciplining the soon-to-be unemployed? Nathan ate his sandwich in mechanical bites, tasting nothing. The break room television was tuned to the local news, where the plant closure was already the lead story. The anchor's voice provided background to the silent workers. Major blow to the local economy, with the loss of approximately 1,100 jobs. Whirlpool has been a fixture in Evansville since 1956, when it acquired the Seeger Refrigeration Company. At its peak in the 1970s, the plant employed over 10,000 workers. Darling clicked off the TV with a savage jab. Can't even eat lunch without hearing about how screwed we are. Nathan's phone vibrated again. Emma, for the third time, he knew he couldn't put it off any longer. Hey, he answered, stepping into the hallway for privacy. Is it true? Emma's voice was tight. Carol Mayers called me, said it's on the news. It's true, Nathan confirmed. They're shutting us down, moving everything to Mexico. A sharp intake of breath, all of it when? By July. They're giving severance, 2 weeks for every year, capped at 52 weeks. A year's salary, Emma calculated quickly, always practical, his wife. That's something at least. Michael's losing his job too, Nathan added. Everybody is. Oh God, Evelyn, Emma trailed off. Their daughter with her growing family, her new mortgage. What are we going to do, Nathan? The question hung between them, unanswerable. For most of their marriage, Nathan had been the problem solver, the steady provider. Now he had no solutions, no plan, just the yawning uncertainty of a future he hadn't prepared for. I don't know, he admitted finally. I just don't know. After his shift, the movements so routine his body performed them without conscious instruction, Nathan found himself driving not toward home, but toward the riverfront. The Ohio River had been Evansville's lifeblood since the city's founding in 1812. First steamboats, then coal barges, then manufacturing. The water had carried away the products of Evansville's factories to the wider world for generations. He parked near the Four Freedoms Monument and walked to the riverwall, leaning against the concrete barrier as February wind whipped off the water. Across the river lay Kentucky, its shoreline a dark line against the fading light. Behind him rose the silhouette of downtown Old National Bank's tower, the Executive Inn, the casino Astor Riverboat. Nathan had never thought of himself as an important man. He'd never sought recognition or prestige. His satisfaction came from the knowledge that he was necessary to his family, to his workplace, to the fabric of his community. He made things. Real, tangible things that people used in their homes. Refrigerators that kept food fresh, that hummed in kitchens across America. What would he be when he couldn't do that anymore? The cold seeped through his work jacket, but he barely noticed. On the river, a barge moved slowly upstream, its navigation lights blinking in the gathering dusk, moving goods from somewhere to somewhere else. The economy in motion, progress. Progress that had left him behind. His phone rang again, Evelyn this time. Dad, her voice was thick with tears. Michael just got home, he told me. I know, sweetheart, Nathan's throat tightened. I'm sorry. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? There it was again, the question he couldn't answer, the expectation that he, the father, the provider, would have a solution. We'll figure it out, he said automatically. Don't worry about it now. Think about the baby. How can I not worry? Michael's already looking online for jobs. There's nothing, Dad, nothing that pays anything close to Whirlpool. Nathan stared at the darkening river. I know, listen, I'll come by tomorrow. We can talk then. After hanging up, he remained at the river wall, watching night claim the water. When his phone rang a third time, he answered without checking the caller. Nathan, it's Eid. We're gathering at Hornville Tavern, a bunch of us. Thought you might want to come. The Hornville Tavern was a working-class bar on the north side, popular with plant workers. Nathan hadn't been there in years, not since Evelyn was in college and he and Emma had more disposable income and fewer responsibilities. I should get home, he demurred. Emma's waiting. Call her, tell her you need this. We all do. Nathan hesitated, then agreed. I'll be there in 20. The tavern was packed when he arrived, the parking lot overflowing with familiar vehicles. Inside, the noise hit him like a physical force, dozens of conversations, shouts of recognition, music from the jukebox, the clack of pool balls. The air was thick with cigarette smoke despite Indiana's partial ban, the smell of beer and fried food, the collective breath of people united in crisis. Anderson, Eid waved him over to a table crowded with men and women in work clothes, many still wearing their Whirlpool badges. Get this man a beer. Someone pressed a cold bottle into Nathan's hand. He took a long drink, the bitter taste washing away the metallic residue of shock that had coated his tongue all day. To Whirlpool, Eid raised his glass in a mocking toast. May they rot in corporate hell. A chorus of agreement went up. Nathan drank again but didn't join the sentiment. Anger hadn't reached him yet. He was still stuck in disbelief, in the strange limbo between knowing and understanding. Did you hear what the severance really is? Terrence Wilkins leaned across the table. It's not just 2 weeks per year, there's fine print. If you're eligible for early retirement, they subtract your pension from your severance. Basically, you get nothing extra. Nathan frowned. That can't be right. Read the packet they're giving out tomorrow. Marcia's cousin in HR confirmed it. Conversations swirled around him. Someone had a brother-in-law at Toyota who said they were freezing new hires. Another had heard Berry Plastics was expanding but paying half what Whirlpool did. A woman was considering moving to Nashville, where her daughter lived. A man was talking about retraining programs at Ivy Tech Community College. You're quiet, Anderson, Eid observed after Nathan's second beer. What are you thinking? Nathan shook his head. Still processing, I guess. You've been there, 36 years? You must be feeling it hard. We all are. Yeah, but some of us saw it coming. You always believed their lies. Eid's words weren't unkind, just matter of fact. Every time they promised they weren't closing, you'd tell everyone to calm down, to trust the company. Had he, Nathan supposed he had, he'd been a company man through and through. When younger workers complained about speed-ups or benefit cuts, he'd counseled patience, loyalty, work hard and you'll be rewarded, the mantra he'd inherited from his father. Remember 2008, Eid continued. When they told us if we took that $3 wage cut for new hires, they'd keep the plant open, you were the one who convinced your team to vote yes. Nathan remembered. The economic crisis had hit manufacturing hard. Whirlpool had presented the concession as a necessary sacrifice to keep jobs in Evansville. The union had split on the vote but ultimately agreed. Nathan had believed it was the right choice at the time. Would have happened anyway, Nathan murmured. They'd already decided. Probably, Eid agreed, signaling for another round. But that's 3 years we worked for less than we deserved, thinking we were saving our jobs. Meanwhile, they were building the plants in Mexico, planning this all along. The thought sat like a stone in Nathan's gut. Had he been a fool? Had his faith in the system, in the basic fairness of work and reward, been misplaced all along? Around midnight, Nathan called Emma to say he was on his way home. His head buzzed with alcohol and conversation, his thoughts a jumble of fear and uncertainty. The house on Sweetser Avenue was dark except for the porch light and a lamp in the living room. Emma waited in her recliner, a book open on her lap but her eyes fixed on the door. She'd been crying. Nathan could tell from the puffiness around her eyes, the redness of her nose. Emma had always been a private crier. You smell like beer, she observed as he hung up his jacket. Went to Hornville with some of the guys. Nathan sat heavily on the sofa, needed to talk it through. Emma nodded, understanding. Did it help? Not really, he rubbed his face, suddenly exhausted. Just confirmed what we already knew, it's over. Not everything is over, Emma said softly, just. That job. Nathan looked around their living room, modest but comfortable, filled with the accumulated evidence of their life together. The recliner Emma had insisted on buying despite its cost. The television they'd splurged on for Nathan's 50th birthday, the bookshelf he'd built when Evelyn was in high school, filled now with photos of their granddaughter, all of it paid for by his work at the plant, all of it suddenly precarious. "I called Evelyn while you were out," Emma said. "She and Michael are coming for dinner tomorrow. We're going to talk options." Options, Nathan echoed. The word felt foreign in his mouth. For 36 years, he hadn't needed options. He'd had certainty. "We'll figure it out," Emma insisted, echoing his own empty reassurance to their daughter. "We always do." But they had never faced anything like this before. The challenges of their married life had been ordinary. Tight budgets when Evelyn was young, Emma's mother's illness, Nathan's kidney stone that kept him out of work for 2 weeks. Never a complete upheaval of the foundation on which they'd built their lives. In bed that night, Nathan stared at the ceiling while Emma's breathing deepened beside him. Sleep eluded him completely. Each time he closed his eyes, his mind filled with numbers. Mortgage payments, health insurance premiums, utility bills, the dwindling balance in their savings account. They had planned for retirement at 65, 9 more years of salary and benefits. 9 more years of contributions to his pension. Now that future had vanished, replaced by a gaping uncertainty. He must have slept eventually because the alarm shocked him awake at 5:00 a.m. For a blessed moment his mind was blank, just another workday beginning. Then reality crashed back, the announcement, the closure, the end. Still, he rose and dressed as he always had, work pants, steel-toed boots. Thermal undershirt against the February cold, routine as armor against chaos. The drive to the plant was silent. Usually he listened to WIKY's morning show, but today he couldn't bear their likely discussion of the closure. Instead, he focused on the familiar route, east on Diamond Avenue, south on Highway 41, exit at Morgan Avenue. The massive Whirlpool complex appeared on his right, its lights burning against the pre-dawn darkness. The parking lot was noticeably emptier than usual. Many third-shift workers had simply not reported for their overnight shifts. Nathan couldn't blame them. Why exhaust yourself for a company that had just betrayed you? Inside, the atmosphere was subdued. People moved through security without the usual banter, collected their assignments in silence, trudged to their stations with heavy steps. Nathan's schedule directed him to HR at 10:30 for his individual transition consultation. Until then, he worked. What else could he do? The refrigerator components arrived at his station as they had for years. His hands performed their memorized dance: install, tighten, check, initial. His body followed its ingrained pattern of movement, developed over decades to minimize strain and maximize efficiency. But his mind wandered. He thought about his father, who had worked at Serval until its closure in 1958, then bounced between jobs until landing at Bussarasiri, where he'd stayed until retirement. He thought about his older brothers, one who'd left Evansville for Indianapolis in the 1970s, one who'd followed their father to Bussarasiri only to be laid off when it closed in 1985. Manufacturing had been the Anderson family's pathway to middle-class stability for generations. What would come next? At 10:30, Nathan made his way to the HR department. The normally quiet corridor was lined with chairs, each occupied by a somber employee waiting their turn. Nathan recognized most of them, men and women he'd worked alongside for decades, some he'd trained, some who'd trained him. Anderson, a clerk, called finally, "Room 4. Inside the small conference room, a woman in a blazer sat with a thick folder and a laptop. Not a local HR representative, Nathan noted. Someone brought in for the closure, someone who wouldn't have to live with the consequences of the conversations she was having today. "Mr. Anderson, I'm Lindsay from corporate HR," she confirmed his suspicion. "I'll be walking you through your transition package today." Transition, such a clean word for such a messy reality. "According to your file, you've been with Whirlpool for 36 years, is that correct?" she asked, all business. "Yes." "And your current position is Senior Assembly Technician, Grade 4. "Yes." She made notes on a form. "Based on your years of service and position, you're eligible for a severance package of 52 weeks' pay at your current rate. However," she paused, looking up at him, "since you're also eligible for early retirement, there's an adjustment." Nathan tensed, remembering Terrence's warning the night before. What kind of adjustment? "The company policy is to offset severance with pension benefits." Since you qualify for early retirement at age 55 with at least 30 years of service, you can begin collecting your pension immediately upon separation. But at a reduced rate, Nathan pointed out. Early retirement cuts the benefit by almost 40%. Lindsay nodded unperturbed. That's correct. The pension reduction is permanent. However, the severance package will be adjusted to account for the pension you'll be receiving. So I either take the pension cut or lose most of my severance. The formula is quite complex, but essentially, yes. The company wants to avoid double payment, as they term it. Nathan's chest tightened. The severance had been his buffer, the cushion that would give him time to figure out next steps. Now it was vanishing before his eyes. What are my options? He asked, struggling to keep his voice level. Lindsay pushed a packet across the table. It's all outlined here. Essentially, you can begin pension benefits immediately at the reduced rate with a smaller severance payment. Or you can defer pension until normal retirement age and receive the full severance now, or various combinations thereof. Nathan stared at the packet, the columns of numbers swimming before his eyes. A lifetime of work reduced to actuarial calculations. There's also information about continuing health coverage through COBRA, Lindsay continued, and resources for job placement assistance, retraining programs, and unemployment benefits. What about our health insurance? My wife has medication. COBRA allows you to maintain your current health insurance for up to 18 months after separation, though you'll be responsible for the full premium, including the portion Whirlpool currently pays. It's outlined on page 7. Nathan did the mental calculation. Their health plan cost the company around $1,500 per month. With his portion, the total would be over $2,000 monthly. Out of unemployment benefits, that would be a fraction of his current salary. Is there anything else you'd like to know about your transition package? Lindsay asked, her tone suggesting this was a routine wrap-up. Nathan had 1,000 questions, but none she could answer. How do I tell my pregnant daughter I can't help her financially anymore? How do I face my wife knowing I can't protect her from what's coming? How do I redefine myself after 36 years of being a Whirlpool man? No, he said finally. I'll read through it. Great, please sign here acknowledging receipt of your transition information. Your last day will be June 24th, as noted in the packet. Nathan signed mechanically, took his copy of the documents, and left. In the hallway, the line of waiting employees had grown. Each face told the same story: confusion, fear, anger, resignation, the stages of grief for a way of life ending. Back on the assembly line, Nathan moved like an automaton. Install, tighten, check, initial, repeat. The familiar rhythm should have been comforting, but now it felt like a countdown. Each completed refrigerator was one closer to the last he would ever build. At lunch, he called Emma. It's bad, he said without preamble. The severance, they're reducing it because of the pension. How much? Emma's voice was steady, practical. I don't know yet, need to go through all the numbers, but it's not going to be what we thought. A pause, okay. We'll adjust our plans. What plans? The words came out sharper than he intended. I don't have any plans, Emma. I don't know what I'm going to do. I know you're scared, she said softly. I am too, but we'll figure it out together. That's what we've always done. Nathan wasn't sure that was true. He'd always been the one with the steady job, the reliable paycheck. Emma had worked part-time at the library after Evelyn started school, but her income had been supplemental, not essential. Their partnership had never been tested like this. Evelyn and Michael are coming at 6, Emma reminded him. I'm making lasagna. I'll be home by 5, Nathan promised, though the thought of facing his daughter and son-in-law with no solutions, no reassurances, made his stomach knot. The remainder of his shift passed in a blur. By 4:30, he was in his truck, heading home through Evansville's late afternoon traffic. The city scrolled past his windows, the neighborhoods and businesses he'd known all his life. Garvin Park, where Evelyn had played soccer. Washington Square Mall, where they shopped for school clothes. The West Side, where generations of working-class families had built their lives around the rhythm of factory shifts. At a stoplight on St. Joseph Avenue, he found himself alongside a semi-truck carrying new refrigerators from the plant. Whirlpool emblazoned on the gleaming white units visible through the trailer's side panels. For how much longer would these trucks roll through Evansville? How long before the sight of them became a painful reminder rather than a source of pride? The light changed. The truck accelerated, heading toward the interstate that would carry its cargo to homes across America. Homes where families would install these refrigerators without a thought for the hands that built them. Nathan watched it go, feeling a strange sense of disconnection. Soon, those hands would no longer be his. At home, he found Emma in the kitchen, her hair pulled back, hands dusted with flour as she prepared garlic bread to accompany the lasagna. "You're early," she observed, accepting his kiss on her cheek. "Left as soon as I could." Nathan washed his hands at the kitchen sink, the ritual scrubbing of industrial grime so ingrained he did it without thinking. "Need help with anything?" "Salad needs making. Vegetables are in the crisper." They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the familiar choreography of a long marriage. Emma sliding the bread into the oven as Nathan chopped cucumbers and tomatoes. The normalcy was both comforting and jarring against the backdrop of the day's events. "I looked at our savings," Emma said finally, keeping her voice casual. "We have about 38,000 in the emergency fund. Another 22,000 in the vacation account." Nathan nodded. They'd been saving for a trip to Alaska for their 40th anniversary, still 4 years away. "The mortgage has 9 years left," she continued. "But we could refinance, stretch it out, lower the payments." "We'd be underwater," Nathan pointed out. "House values are still down from the recession." "Maybe, but it would buy us time." Time for what? Nathan wanted to ask. But he held his tongue. Emma was trying to be helpful, to focus on practical solutions rather than the overwhelming uncertainty. "I talked to Carol Mayers today," Emma added. "Her husband Jack took early retirement from Alcoa last year. She says they're managing okay on his reduced pension and her income from the salon." "Jack's pension is probably twice what mine will be," Nathan said. "Alcoa has a strong union." "Still, it's something to consider." The doorbell interrupted them. Evelyn and Michael, arriving with their 2-year-old daughter Lily in tow. The little girl squirmed in her father's arms, reaching for her grandfather as soon as she saw him. "Grandpa," she squealed up. Nathan lifted her, breathing in the sweet scent of baby shampoo and the indefinable essence of small child. Lily patted his cheeks with sticky hands, oblivious to the weight of adult concerns. "How are you holding up?" Evelyn asked, embracing her mother. Her pregnancy showed clearly now, her belly rounded under her sweater. Another grandchild who would never know the security Nathan had taken for granted most of his life. "We're okay," Emma answered for them both, "just taking it one step at a time." Dinner was a strained affair despite Emma's best efforts. The lasagna was perfect, the garlic bread golden and fragrant, but conversation faltered repeatedly. Every topic seemed to circle back to the plant closure and its implications. "I've been looking online," Michael said finally, addressing what they'd all been avoiding. "There are jobs out there." "Not many, but some." "Anything promising?" Nathan asked, grateful for his son-in-law's initiative. Michael shrugged. "Toyota in Princeton is a possibility, but the commute would be brutal. Berry Plastics has some openings, but they pay maybe 2/3 what Whirlpool does. Bristol-Myers might be hiring in their warehouse, but it's all through temp agencies now." The reality of Evansville's job market hung over the table. The city had never fully recovered from the recession. Manufacturing jobs, the kind that could support a family on a single income, were vanishing, replaced by service sector work with lower wages and fewer benefits. "What about you, Dad?" Evelyn asked. "Have you thought about what you want to do?" The question hit Nathan like a physical blow. What did he want to do? He'd never framed his work life in terms of wants. He'd done what was necessary, what was available, what provided for his family. Want had never entered into it. "I'm still processing everything," he said. "Got my official packet today. Need to go through the numbers, see where we stand." "There's no rush," Emma interjected. "We have some savings, we can take time to make the right decisions." "There's the community college," Evelyn suggested. "They have programs for displaced workers, career counseling, retraining." Nathan nodded noncommittally. The thought of starting over at 56, sitting in a classroom learning new skills, competing with people half his age for entry-level positions, it was almost unimaginable. "I was talking to Mom about maybe refinancing the house," he said instead, "stretching out the mortgage to lower the payments." "That could work," Michael agreed. "Interest rates are low right now." The conversation turned to practical matters, budgets, insurance options, potential economies. Nathan participated mechanically, offering suggestions, considering proposals. But beneath the surface, a current of unreality persisted. This couldn't be happening, not to him, not after 36 years of doing everything right. After dinner, while Emma and Evelyn cleared the table, Nathan took Lily to the living room. The toddler brought him book after book, climbing into his lap for stories. Her warm weight against his chest anchored him, her complete trust in his presence a reminder of what remained unchanged, his role as father, as grandfather. "More story, Grandpa," Lily demanded when he finished Goodnight Moon for the third time. "How about a different one?" Nathan reached for another book from the stack. "No." "Moon book. Again." Again, she confirmed with a toddler's absolute certainty. So he read it again, the familiar words a litany of comfort. "Good night, room, good night, moon. Good night, cow jumping over the moon." From the kitchen came the murmur of Emma and Evelyn's voices, occasionally punctuated by Michael's deeper tones. They were talking about him, Nathan was certain. Worrying about how he was handling the news, making plans to support him through what came next. The role reversal stung. He had always been the protector, the provider. Now he was becoming someone to be concerned about, to be managed. "Grandpa, you reading wrong," Lily complained, pointing to the page he'd been staring at blankly. "Sorry, sweetheart," Nathan refocused on the book. "Good night stars, good night air, good night noises everywhere." Later, after Evelyn, Michael, and Lily had gone home with promises to check in tomorrow, Nathan retreated to the spare bedroom they'd converted to a home office. The transition packet from Whirlpool sat on the desk, its corporate logo gleaming on the cover. He spread the documents out, forcing himself to read each page carefully. The severance calculation was as bad as he'd feared. Because of the pension offset, his 52 weeks of pay would be reduced to just 26. The health insurance continuation through Cobra would consume nearly half of that. His pension, if taken immediately, would provide about $1,850 monthly, a significant drop from his current take-home pay of around $3,200. They could survive on it, especially if Emma increased her hours at the library, but the margin for error would be razor-thin. One major home repair, one medical emergency, one unforeseen expense, and they would be in trouble. Emma found him there an hour later, still surrounded by paperwork, a legal pad covered with calculations beside him. "That bad?" she asked, perching on the edge of the desk. "Not great," Nathan admitted. "We can make it work, but it'll be tight, really tight." Emma studied the figures he'd written. "What about finding another job, something part-time at least?" "Been thinking about that. Not sure what I'm qualified for outside the plant." "You're smart, you have skills, they just might need to be applied differently." Nathan wasn't convinced. His skills were specific to manufacturing, assembly, quality control, the operation of industrial equipment. What use were those in an economy increasingly dominated by service work and technology? "Maybe," he conceded. "I'll start looking around." Emma touched his shoulder gently. "We should get some sleep. Everything looks worse when you're tired." But sleep, when it finally came, brought little relief. Nathan's dreams were fragmented, anxiety-ridden, showing up at the plant to find it empty, running through endless corridors looking for his workstation, trying to complete a refrigerator that kept falling apart in his hands. He woke at his usual time, 5:00 a.m., his body still on the schedule it had followed for decades. For a moment, he considered staying in bed. What was the point of maintaining the routine when the purpose behind it was ending? But habit prevailed. He rose, showered, dressed for work. The plant operated in an increasingly surreal atmosphere as February turned to March. Production continued. Refrigerators still needed to be built until the Mexican facilities were fully operational, but the workforce dwindled daily. Some found other jobs and left immediately. Others called in sick more frequently, their commitment waning as the end approached. Many simply went through the motions, their pride in craftsmanship giving way to apathy. Nathan clung to routine as a life raft. He arrived on time, performed his tasks with the same care he always had, maintained his perfect attendance record. It wasn't just habit or work ethic, it was fear. As long as he was at Whirlpool, doing what he had always done, he could postpone confronting what came next. But reality intruded persistently. The job opportunities bulletin board in the break room filled with notices, mostly for positions paying half what Whirlpool did. The employee parking lot emptied gradually, like a receding tide. The cafeteria reduced its offerings as customer numbers dwindled. Management began dismantling unused production lines, creating equipment for shipment to Mexico. At home, Nathan and Emma began their own retrenchment. They reviewed every expense, eliminating what they could. The planned kitchen renovation was canceled. Their annual summer vacation, usually a week at a lakeside cabin in Michigan, was shelved. Emma increased her hours at the library, moving from 3 days a week to 5. They met with their mortgage lender to discuss refinancing options. Nathan started his own job search, tentatively at first, then with increasing desperation as rejection followed rejection. His age was never mentioned explicitly, that would be illegal, but the message was clear in the polite letters and emails. Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to pursue candidates whose qualifications more closely match our needs. By April, the plant was operating at half capacity. Production lines were consolidated, shifts reduced. Nathan found himself training Mexican managers who visited the plant to learn the processes they would oversee in their country. The irony was bitter, teaching his replacements, sharing the knowledge he'd accumulated over decades. It's not personal, Eid Kanlai told him over beers at Hornville one evening. It's just business. Feels pretty personal from where I'm standing, Nathan replied. Know what I heard? Eid leaned forward conspiratorially. The workers in Mexico make $4 an hour, no benefits to speak of. No union, no safety regulations worth a damn. Nathan took a long pull of his beer, and the executives get bonuses for cost reduction initiatives. The American dream, Eid said with a hollow laugh. Only now it's the Mexican dream, and we're the ones waking up. In May, as his last day at the plant approached, Nathan finally accepted a position at O'Reilly Auto Parts on Green River Road. The pay was $9.50 an hour, less than half his Whirlpool wage. The schedule was erratic: evenings, weekends, whatever shifts were available. The work was mindless: stocking shelves, running the register, helping customers find the parts they needed. It's temporary, he told Emma when he broke the news, just until something better comes along. Emma had nodded, but they both knew the truth. At 56, with no education beyond high school and skills tied to a vanishing industry, something better was increasingly unlikely. The part-time job at O'Reilly's barely covered the gap between Nathan's reduced pension and their expenses. They dipped into savings each month, watching the balance decline with mounting anxiety. Emma took on additional shifts at the library. They rented out their finished basement to a graduate student from the university, a young man studying industrial economics, ironically enough, and still, it wasn't enough. The refinanced mortgage stretched their budget to its limits. Health insurance through Cobra consumed an obscene portion of their income. Evelyn needed help with childcare costs after Michael took a job at Toyota that required him to leave home by 4:30 a.m. for the hour-long commute to Princeton. By the fall of 2010, 6 months after the closure announcement, Nathan barely recognized his life. His days, once structured around the familiar rhythm of the plant, now followed an erratic pattern dictated by his O'Reilly schedule. His hands, once skilled at precise assembly work, now broke down cardboard boxes and arranged motor oil displays. His identity, once bound up in being a Whirlpool man, a maker of tangible products, was unmoored. The physical toll was significant. Standing for 8-hour shifts on concrete floors aggravated the arthritis in his knees and back. The constant lifting, cases of oil, heavy parts, inventory boxes, strained shoulders already damaged by decades of repetitive motion. But the psychological impact was worse: the loss of status, the diminished income, the erosion of the future he'd planned. Have you thought about the community college? Emma asked one evening in October as they sat at the kitchen table reviewing their increasingly precarious finances. There's a program for displaced workers, tuition assistance, career counseling. Nathan looked up from the stack of bills. And study what exactly? I'm 56, Emma. I don't have time to start over. It's not starting over, it's adapting. Emma's voice was gentle but insistent. You have skills, experience. You just need to translate them into something the market values now. The market, Nathan practically spat the word. The market doesn't value anything but cheap labor and quick profits. That's why I'm stocking windshield wipers instead of building refrigerators. Nathan. No, I'm not going back to school at my age to learn how to use computers or whatever they think will make me employable. I had a career, I was good at it, and they took it away. Emma reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. I know you're angry, you have every right to be, but we have to move forward somehow. Nathan pulled his hand away, standing abruptly. I'm going for a walk. Outside, the October evening was cool, leaves skittering across the sidewalk in the breeze. Nathan walked without direction, hands jammed in the pockets of his jacket. The neighborhood was quiet, porch lights glowing in the gathering dusk, occasional televisions flickering behind curtained windows. He'd walked these streets thousands of times in the 30 years they'd lived on Sweetser Avenue. He knew every crack in the sidewalk, every house and yard. The Murray family on the corner, their children now grown and gone. The Patterson house with its meticulously maintained garden. The rental property that changed tenants every few years. This neighborhood had been built for people like him, blue-collar workers with steady jobs and modest ambitions. A house, a yard, maybe a boat or camper for weekend getaways. Nothing extravagant but comfortable, secure. Now that security was evaporating not just for him but for an entire class of Americans. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Evelyn, "Hey, sweetheart," he answered, trying to keep the weariness from his voice. "Dad, are you busy? Can you come over?" Something in her tone set off alarm bells. "What's wrong?" "It's Michael. He had an accident on the way home from work." Nathan's heart stuttered. "Is he okay?" "He's at St. Mary's. Mom's with me now. We're heading to the hospital. Can you come watch Lily and the baby?" "Of course, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Nathan was already turning back toward home. "What happened?" "He fell asleep at the wheel," Evelyn's voice cracked. "The commute, the hours, he's been so tired, he crossed the center line, hit a guardrail." "Jesus, but he's okay." "They think so. Broken arm, concussion. They're doing scans to check for internal injuries." "I'm on my way. Tell him to hang in there." Nathan jogged back to the house, explained the situation to Emma, and drove to Evelyn's small ranch home on the west side. His daughter looked exhausted, her 7-month-old son fussing in her arms, 2-year-old Lily clinging to her leg. "They called from work," Evelyn explained as she handed him the baby, "said his car was totaled. That he was lucky to be alive." "Go," Nathan urged. "I've got this. Call when you know something." After Evelyn and Emma left, Nathan settled into the domestic chaos of caring for his grandchildren. Lily needed dinner, a bath, bedtime stories. The baby needed a bottle, a diaper change, to be walked and bounced and soothed. The mindless rhythm of childcare was oddly comforting, clear tasks with immediate results. It was after midnight when Emma called. "He's going to be okay," she reported. "Broken arm, cracked ribs, concussion. They're keeping him overnight for observation, but he should come home tomorrow." "Thank God," Nathan breathed. "What about the car?" A pause. "Total loss. Insurance will cover some, but they're underwater on the loan." Another financial blow. Michael and Evelyn had bought the car new in 2008, financing most of the purchase. Like many Americans, they owed more than the vehicle was worth. "They can use my truck until they figure something out," Nathan offered. "I can take the bus to O'Reilly's." "That's what I told them." "But Nathan," Emma hesitated, "Michael can't keep commuting to Princeton, not with these hours. It's too dangerous." "What choice does he have? The Toyota job pays better than anything in Evansville." "I don't know. But something has to change." After hanging up, Nathan sat in the darkened living room of his daughter's house, his sleeping grandson heavy against his chest. The baby's breath was warm on his neck, his tiny hand curled around Nathan's thumb with surprising strength. Something had to change, but what? The options were constrained by economic reality. Move to Princeton, housing costs were higher there. Michael quit and find work in Evansville. Nothing paid what Toyota did. Nathan and Emma helped more financially. Their own situation was precarious at best. The accident crystallized something Nathan had been feeling for months. The system was broken. The social contract he'd believed in, work hard, stay loyal, live modestly, and you'll be secure, had been unilaterally revoked. Not just for him, but for his children, his grandchildren. For an entire class of Americans who had built their lives around industrial work. The baby stirred, making small mewling sounds. Nathan adjusted him, patting his back gently. "It's okay," he whispered, though it wasn't. "I've got you." But the promise felt hollow. What could he really offer this child? What security could he provide in a world where 36 years of loyal service ended in a corporate announcement and a severance packet? Where his son-in-law nearly died driving home from a job an hour away because nothing closer paid a living wage. The next morning, Emma arrived to take over grandparent duty while Nathan went to his shift at O'Reilly's. The store was busy with Saturday customers, people buying oil for do-it-yourself changes, parts for weekend repair projects, accessories for vehicles they couldn't afford to replace. Nathan moved through his tasks mechanically, his mind still on Michael's accident and its implications. The store manager, a 30-something named Travis who'd been working retail since high school, seemed to sense Nathan's distraction. "Everything okay, Anderson?" he asked during a lull. "You seem off today." Nathan considered deflecting, offering a polite nothing, but suddenly the pretense felt exhausting. My son-in-law had a car accident yesterday, he explained. Fell asleep driving home from Toyota in Princeton. He's okay, but the car's totaled. Travis winced. That's rough, that commute is brutal. My cousin does it too, says the money's worth it, but man, the hours. The money's only worth it until you're dead, Nathan said flatly. Travis had no response to that. What could he say? It was the reality they all lived with now, impossible choices between financial survival and physical well-being. After his shift, Nathan drove to St. Mary's Hospital on Washington Avenue. Michael was being discharged, his arm in a cast, his face pale and bruised. Evelyn hovered nearby, simultaneously managing the baby, the paperwork, and her own visible anxiety. Nathan, Michael attempted a smile when he saw his father-in-law. Come to see the human wreck. Came to drive you home, Nathan corrected. Emma's with Lily, cars out front whenever they release you. While Evelyn finished the discharge process, Nathan helped Michael into a wheelchair, hospital policy for all departing patients. I really screwed up, Michael said quietly when they were alone. Could have killed someone, all because I was too tired to pull over. You were trying to get home to your family, Nathan replied. After working a 10-hour shift an hour away. Still no excuse for falling asleep at the wheel. Nathan pushed the wheelchair toward the elevator. When I started at Whirlpool, we had a saying. Home by dinner, not in time for breakfast. Meant you didn't work so much overtime that you only saw your family when they were asleep. Different world, Michael observed. Shouldn't be. Work should let a man support his family without killing himself. The elevator doors opened. They rode down in silence, each lost in his own thoughts. At home, Nathan found Emma in the kitchen with Lily making cookies shaped like pumpkins for Halloween. The domestic scene, flour dusting the counter, the sweet smell of vanilla, his granddaughter's concentrated expression as she pressed cookie cutters into dough, contrasted sharply with the sterile hospital environment they'd just left. Grandpa, Lily abandoned her cookies to launch herself at Nathan. We make pumpkins. I see that, Nathan lifted her, careful not to get flour on his work shirt. They look delicious. Not eat yet, Lily informed him seriously. Not cooked. Very important distinction, Nathan agreed, setting her back down. How's it going here? Fine, Emma wiped her hands on a towel. How's Michael? Sore, embarrassed, worried about the car. Emma nodded. I told Evelyn they can use your truck as long as they need to. I was thinking, Nathan began, then paused, organizing his thoughts. What if we sold this house, bought something smaller, maybe a duplex? They could live on one side, we could take the other, help with the kids, share expenses. Emma's eyes widened slightly. They'd never seriously discussed leaving the house on Sweetser Avenue. It had been their home for 30 years, the place where they'd raised Evelyn, built their life. That's a significant change, she said carefully. Everything's changed, Nathan pointed out. Maybe it's time we acknowledge that. Emma studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Let's talk about it, not with Lily listening, though. She nodded toward their granddaughter, who was back at the cookie station, happily pressing shapes into dough. That evening, after Lily was asleep and Evelyn had taken Michael home to rest, Nathan and Emma sat at their kitchen table. The same table where they'd had thousands of meals, made countless decisions, weathered the storms of their married life. You're serious about selling the house? Emma asked. Nathan nodded. Been thinking about it for a while. We have too much space now. The mortgage, even refinanced, is our biggest expense. And Evelyn and Michael need help. I love this house, Emma said softly. All our memories are here. I know I do too, but memories don't pay bills. Where would we even go? Housing prices are down, but so is our equity. We might not clear much after the mortgage. I've been looking, Nathan admitted. There's a duplex on the west side near Evelyn, needs some work, but the price is reasonable. We could sell this place, pay cash for the duplex, maybe even have some left to rebuild our savings. Emma looked surprised. You've really thought this through. Had a lot of time to think lately. Emma was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing patterns on the worn tabletop. It would be nice to be closer to the grandkids, she said finally, and sharing expenses would help everyone. It's not what we planned, Nathan acknowledged, but nothing is anymore. No, Emma's smile was tinged with sadness. But maybe that's okay, maybe we need new plans. The decision, once made, moved forward with surprising speed. Their house sold within 2 months for less than they'd hoped, but enough to purchase the duplex outright. The move was exhausting, physically and emotionally. 30 years of accumulated possessions had to be sorted, discarded, packed. The duplex, while structurally sound, needed updates and repairs that consumed Nathan's weekends and evenings. But by February 2011, 1 year after the Whirlpool closure announcement, the Andersons were settled in their new home, one half of a modest duplex on Evansville's west side. Evelyn, Michael, and their children occupied the other half. The arrangement was an adjustment for everyone: less privacy, more shared responsibility, boundaries to negotiate, but the financial benefits were immediate. Shared utilities, no mortgage payments, built-in childcare that allowed Evelyn to return to part-time work while Michael recovered. For Nathan, the move marked a psychological turning point. In selling the house on Sweetser Avenue, he had acknowledged that the life he'd planned, the secure retirement, the paid-off mortgage, the occasional indulgences of travel or a new car, was gone. The recognition was painful but also unexpectedly liberating. He continued working at O'Reilly's, supplementing his reduced pension. The work remained physically demanding and financially inadequate, but he approached it differently now. It wasn't a career, an identity, a source of pride. It was simply a job, a means to an end. His real work was elsewhere, helping Michael with repairs around the duplex, watching his grandchildren while Evelyn worked, building a community garden in the vacant lot down the street. In June 2011, Nathan drove past the Whirlpool plant for the first time in months. The parking lot was empty, the building silent, for sale signs lined the perimeter. The water tower still proclaimed Whirlpool in fading blue letters, but the company was gone, its jobs moved to Mexico, its tax base withdrawn from Evansville, its promises broken. Nathan pulled over, parking along Highway 41 to stare at the abandoned facility. For 36 years, he had given that place his labor, his loyalty, his belief. In return, it had provided for his family, given structure to his days, shaped his identity. Now it stood empty, a monument to corporate calculations that valued profit over people, shareholders over communities. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. "Evelyn, Dad, where are you? Mom says you were supposed to watch the kids while she's at work." Nathan checked the time. He'd lost track, sitting here staring at the ghosts of his former life. "Sorry, sweetheart, got distracted. I'll be there in 15 minutes. "Everything okay?" Nathan took a last look at the silent plant. "Yeah," he said, and was surprised to find he meant it. "Everything's okay, I'll see you soon." As he pulled back onto Highway 41, heading toward his new home, his new life, Nathan realized something fundamental had shifted within him. The anger that had fueled him since the closure announcement, at Whirlpool, at the economy, at a system that discarded loyal workers, had not disappeared, but it had changed, transmuted into something else. Not acceptance exactly, but a determination to build something new from the ruins of what had been promised. His worth was not determined by his productivity. His identity was not tied to his job. His value did not depend on a corporation's assessment. These were the false beliefs that had shaped his life, inherited from his father, reinforced by a culture that equated work with worth. The plant closure had forced him to confront these beliefs, to recognize their hollowness. What remained when those beliefs fell away was what had always mattered most: his family, his community, the connections that sustained him beyond any paycheck or job title. Nathan turned onto the street where the duplex stood. Emma's car was gone at work until 6, but Evelyn's was there, and Michael's truck, Nathan's former vehicle, now transferred to his son-in-law since Michael's car insurance had paid out. As he pulled into the driveway, the front door opened. Lily burst out, followed more cautiously by Michael, the baby on his hip. "Grandpa," Lily called, running toward him. "You late, we waiting." "Sorry about that," Nathan told Michael as Lily attached herself to his leg. "Lost track of time." Michael shrugged. "No problem. We were just getting ready to work on that leaky faucet in our bathroom. Want to help?" Nathan lifted Lily into his arms. "Absolutely. Let me just say hi to this little princess first." Inside, the duplex was chaotic in the way all homes with small children. Our toys scattered across the floor, laundry waiting to be folded, dishes in the sink. But it was alive in a way his old, emptier house had not been, filled with the sounds and smells and evidence of family, of connection, of purpose beyond work. This was not the life Nathan had planned. Not the retirement he had envisioned during those long years at Whirlpool. Not the future he had worked toward with such single-minded dedication. But as he followed Michael to the bathroom, Lily chattering in his ear about the broke water they were going to fix, Nathan realized it was a life worth living. Different but valuable, changed but real, and that was something no corporation, no economy, no closure could take away.